Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Live with NORML. I'm J.M. Padini, the Development Director for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, May 24th, 2024. You know what that means? It's time for me to answer your burning questions live. Thanks for taking a minute out of your Friday to hang out with us here at NORML. Take a quick second to, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a note in the comments and your burning questions. Hey, Tree, good to see you. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Hey, Kyle in Indiana. Of course, Chris is here from NORML South Africa. Hello, Panic Man in Texas. Hello, everyone watching us on Instagram. I can't show your comments. It doesn't work that way here, but I can still see them. Hey, mans. Yeah, it is. You can tell how, well, I mean, maybe not, but like it's super dark in Richmond right now. It's dark in my office because there's no light coming in the window because it is kind of monsoony here, as you said. Hey, Fred. Hey, Gilberto from Chicago. Hello. Pot calls the kettle bong. Welcome back, friend. Hey, Matt in Phoenix. Hi, Nomi in Atlanta. Hey, Richard in Vallejo. Hi, Ian. Good to see you, friend. Hey, Marcello in Ontario. Tammy in Arizona. There's a lot of people watching on Instagram. That's awesome. Hey, hit that follow button if you're watching us on Instagram. Hey, Caleb in Virginia. Caleb says we need retail, meaning adult use retail in Virginia. You're right, Caleb, we do. Especially since legalization took effect over 3 years ago. But we don't have retail access in Virginia because elections have consequences. In Virginia, you didn't bring your best when you elected this current administration. So, and look, that's not to say that this administration alone is at fault. I mean, they're super at fault, but they're not alone in it. The Virginia Democrats who thought it was a good idea to not enact retail sales at the same time as legalization were making bad choices. We'll just politely say that bad choices. Yeah, so I guess collective, like that's something apparently they agree on, both Virginia Democrats and the Republican-controlled administration, that letting the illicit market capitalize on consumers for as long as possible. That's clearly their end game. Go ahead, tell me why I'm wrong. How do I say my name? JM. How do I say your name? Debo. Tree, I know North Carolina is sad. Hey, Santa Fe, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about some of that 1937 mentality. Panic on Instagram says administrations say whatever, but ultimately they follow the money. Mm-hmm. The money is in prison, and then that's where they're going to go. You're right. Yeah, you're right. And people who capitalize off of criminalization want to keep capitalizing off of criminalization. Hey, Dennis, I really like your question. Dennis, watching us on Facebook, asks, do we think medical will be here in North Carolina since Cherokee opened? So Cherokee is tribal land, and they opened a dispensary. as they can do. And this is a great segue into one of our news articles for the week. So thank you, Dennis. Do I think that will make North Carolina do things? No, I don't. Does it help? Maybe. Again, I will say elections have consequences. And if you elect people who have terrible positions on cannabis policy, you can expect to get terrible cannabis policies. Hey, Christopher. Wow, the internet's broken, so that's fun. I was going to look something up for you. There we go. So in North Carolina, there is still the one bill, S3, which is the North Carolina Compassionate Care Act. It did cross over last year and is just kind of sitting there. There's an action alert for it, so send that action alert, Dennis, if you haven't already. I am going to drop a link to it in the comments for you on Facebook. You'll see it there. If you're in North Carolina, you can go ahead and send an email in support of the North Carolina Compassionate Care Act. Sometimes legislators are influenced by what's happening in the surrounding states, but I don't, particularly in conservative controlled states, I don't see that to be necessarily that meaningful. So I don't know that they'll be encouraged by Cherokee opening a dispensary at all. Let's find out. Hey, Joe, happy Friday. Yeah, Christopher, that's accurate. Thank you, Christopher, for letting us know that there are over 5,000 responses so far for the public comment period that opened this week on rescheduling. Hey, Heidi in Boulder, thanks for joining us. Christopher, I want to talk about public comment. I also want to talk about tribal dispensaries. But Ant asked a question. Ant asked a question on Instagram. How about commercial driver's license holders being able to get our medical cards at least? I don't think that rescheduling in and of itself addresses that restriction, but rescheduling or even the discussion around rescheduling should at the very least encourage additional evaluations of policies that are becoming increasingly problematic. Notably, we've written a number of times about the trucking industry and how when truckers who are subject to federally mandated drug testing, when they fail that drug test for cannabis, they don't stay in that industry. They go and do something else. And this is creating driver shortages, and this is exacerbating the supply chain issues that the country's been experiencing since the pandemic. So let me see on the t-shirt. Oh, thanks, Chris. So yeah, I don't think that rescheduling would address that directly, but it should hopefully encourage review of these policies specific to CDLs. Thanks for your question, Ann. And then Hippo Gator. First of all, I like that your name is Hippo Gator because at Disney we had a float called Gator Hippo, so was kind of insider baseball. You're welcome. I'm going to call you Gator Hippo. Is that okay? Thanks. Asked, do we know what's happening with the Farm Bill and hemp derivatives? Yes, there was. Listen, we don't hemp at NORML because the M stands for marijuana, but I can read. So what I can tell you is that yes, there was an amendment added to the Farm Bill that would, at least according to the drafters, close the loophole on hemp derivatives, whether they are extracted, delta-9, or synthesized analogs, derivatives, D8, D9, D10, HHC. The list goes on and on. So yes, there was an amendment added. I think the larger question is a Farm Bill even going to pass? That's what I know about all of those things. Oh, thank you, Christopher. Hey, Skyline, I saw you over there, and then I saw your comment, and I was like, wait, I can't. Hi. I see you. Hey, Kyle. Kyle asks, oh, ma'ams, I see your question, sorry. What is the state closest to legalizing marijuana? Closest is a word. Look, I'll tell you this, Kyle. Florida will have legalization on their ballot in November. It's a constitutional amendment, so instead of a simple majority, it requires 60% vote. Yes, for the constitutional amendment. So I'm going to say it like that. Florida is the next one to watch, the one to watch. Hi, Nick in Quakertown. Okay. Let's see if I can keep up with the questions. Oh, Mams asks, with states that have legal retail, is the trend monolithic retail conglomerates, or do small independent shops thrive? I think that there has at least been more conversation lately, whether genuine or not. I think largely it has to do with, like the sort of Twitter warrior narrative. But I think there's at least been lip service paid to, hey, when we create a regulatory model for cannabis sales in our state, we should ensure that it doesn't prohibit small operators, that it's not cost prohibitive, that there aren't ridiculous barriers in place. I think lawmakers are at least having those talks. I don't know that they're necessarily following through with it, but there's at least more interest in ensuring that there's economic opportunity for the people who actually live in that state. But here's one thing to consider, ma'ams. You're not going to, not you personally, but we're not going to solve capitalism with weed policy. Cannabis is a commodity in the United States, and it's going to be commodified just like anything else. So, as I'm sure you've heard me say, we should all have the luxury of one day being able to choose between, craft cannabis at the boutique dispensary, pharmaceuticalized cannabinoids at CVS, and Marlboro Greens at the big box store. In some states, you basically have those choices already, or at least something analogous to that, because that's how capitalism works. I think the intent is there, just like conversations around equity and what does that mean? The intent is there. Are they getting it right? No, of course not. But someone's at least considering it. Hey, Wade. What did you miss? Not much yet. Hey, Samuel, I'm glad you set an alarm. Yeah, Kyle, I've seen similar polling on where Florida voters stand on the issue. There's a large swath of independents, though, in Florida. Florida is one of those states that wants you to choose a party. So, yeah, Insulin, back to that previous question about business structure related to cannabis. Yes, it does certainly vary by state and the model, the regulatory model that each state imposes. Some states still require vertical integration and have limited licensure models, and you will continue to see those in conservative states that have yet to enact any meaningful access. You'll see them start with something like that first. Kyle, we're just the Kyle and Jay on show today. Kyle says, hopefully Joe Biden will decriminalize marijuana like he promised he would, but right now he is failing to do that promise. So he can't. I agree. It would be great if he would follow through with that. Here's the thing. The president can't do that. This is going to require an act of Congress. Congress has to pass a bill that removes marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Now, somewhere along the way, Chuck Schumer, someone thought, Chuck Schumer, that we should say decriminalize at the federal level. I don't know that that's the right choice. I also don't know that legalize at the federal level is the right legal nuance for this, but, call it what you want to. Call it what you want, yeah. But it is, in all seriousness, a bill that removes marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act. And then doing that would allow states to continue setting their own cannabis policies, but without threat of federal interference. Now, there's not a lot of threat of federal interference right now, but it does still exist. That's not keeping states from setting their own cannabis policies, though. The president cannot use an executive order to remove marijuana from the CSA or legalize it or decriminalize it or whatever other words people want to use for it. But what is great is that we have a president who is saying out loud, marijuana does not belong in its current classification. Is that enough? No. Is it better than everybody before? Yes. And has pardoned misdemeanor or federal possession charges. So let's just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And yes, we can do both. We can say yes to rescheduling and at the same time say it's not enough. Someone's calling me to tell me that they're here to bring me something, and I'm doing this show. So just see if they figured it out on their own. Thank you for those comments, Kyle. Samuel, you got your membership card on Monday. I love that so much. It's not one of the stack that came back. People's mail comes back to us all the time. Christopher asks if I've made public comments on regulations.gov yet. No, we are still putting together we're still working on our public comment form. Yes, okay. Hi, James. Hey, Alori. Alori asks, what states people love this one, states we imagine will be the last to legalize, and then says, I think Idaho will be up there. Alori, I think Idaho is a great one to put at the top of that last to legalize list. despite the best efforts of good people like Russ. Hello, I don't like your name, Roach Boy, but hello. Michigan and Detroit need support. Send us an email. I don't know that rescheduling is creating any additional, rescheduling hasn't occurred yet. And even if it does, I don't know that it creates any additional regulation. I don't think it does that. I don't think it does anything, honestly, when it comes to the consumer experience. It's illegal under Schedule 1. It's illegal under Schedule 3. FDA is not going to suddenly begin regulating the plant. Corn on Instagram says, I think one of the biggest issues is employment protection, especially for patients in legal states. I agree. It is a huge issue, and it's not a sexy issue. And we say this a lot at NORML. Look, you know, people want to talk about the industry all day long, right? And that's fine. There are dozens of industry groups out there. They are abundant. There is one group that represents consumers, one, and has done only that since 1970. And this makes, you know, NORML really important because there's no industry without consumers. If your consumers are worried about going to jail, losing their job, losing their kids, losing their housing, losing their scholarships, not being able to have access to healthcare, do you think their priority is which one of your products is on sale this week? I don't. So NORML agrees with you, Corn, that things like parental rights protections, employment protections, housing protections, those are becoming more and more important as we move into an increasingly post-legalization United States. Yes. Roach Boy, great example. Marinol is 100% pure synthetic THC in a little capsule. It's also available in a liquid form called Cinderus. And those are Schedule 3 drugs, available by prescription today. Panic asks, how much do Texans have to worry about the Farm Bill? I mean, yes, it's current. The proposed amendment would theoretically close the existing loopholes. Let's see if the Farm Bill's even, are we even going to have a Farm Bill? Is Congress even going to pass a Farm Bill? I think that's the larger question on that right now. I think they're going to struggle to do that. Yeah, Matt, I don't think rescheduling matters for either. I think if you are in the industry, the way rescheduling matters is that it opens the door for the potential opportunity for tax deductions. Cannabis businesses in the US are not able to take tax deductions right now. This makes operating that type of business, you know, expensive. And that's what rescheduling, hopefully, and if it does anything other than changing the conversation around cannabis policy and sort of forcing the federal government to abandon their flat earth position that they've maintained for decades, it does, you know, here we have the federal government recognizing that cannabis has medical utility. Then if rescheduling does occur, then there's that potential for tax deductions for businesses. For consumers, maybe that results in lower prices. Mitchell asking about rescheduling and Second Amendment rights. No, I don't think that rescheduling in and of itself like a lot of other sections of code or law, I don't think rescheduling in and of itself is automatically going to impact or like force ATF to amend their questionnaire. Could it encourage them to do so? Yes. Kyle, you asked about South Dakota and North Dakota. South Dakota turned in their signatures to get legalization on the ballot in November. So South Dakota did turn in their signatures. but haven't heard from the Attorney General yet as to whether or not there have been enough signatures to qualify, and haven't heard anything about North Dakota yet. Christopher says Congress couldn't pass a bathroom break, and I don't think you're wrong. Look, Christopher, I think we've talked about this before. Georgia does have what they call low THC. I really hate these program names, or we call them CBD or low THC or whatever. Just call it like limited. It's splitting too many hairs. Georgia, Texas, and Virginia all started off with the same limited use model. And we have 3 very different examples of where you can go in just a few years with something like that. Again, Georgia, you've got an election problem. You elect terrible lawmakers, but the good news is you do have a medical cannabis program that is at least somewhat operational. You can expand it. You just have to be thoughtful about the language that you choose, and that's the thing. If you want to expand it, you can. You just have to be smart. And you have to use language that appeals emotionally to the people who are the decision makers, right? If you demand things like, well, no, I want all of this, then you're going to get nothing. And you're not going to go from complete prohibition to legalization in the span of 6 years. But if you're willing to sort of appeal to them, then you can take a lot of little steps and they'll add up really quickly. So I think that it's okay that you have a crappy model, Georgia. You can make it better if you're smart about it. Christopher asks, when all is said and done, how many comments do you think we'll end up having on rescheduling? The last big sort of comment thing like this was for FDA, and we submitted 10,000 comments, just us. So I'm expecting at least that. And we haven't even really put out our template for it. We published that it's happening, but we haven't put out our template for it, and that will be coming. Mams asks if in Virginia have the police gotten better on understanding laws and lowered arrests. Yes, arrests decreased by 90% about immediately, because which is what happens. It's almost like the policy expert for Virginia said, hey, you know what happens with decriminalization? Arrests decreased by about 50%, and with legalization, arrests decreased by about 90%. And then when you read the data in Virginia on arrests, it's almost like the policy expert who said those words out loud was correct. No, we did not have a rough 2 to 3 years here. It was immediate. The impact was immediate. It's also helpful if you're able to provide information to law enforcement. Some localities are more open to it than others. Some will outright ask for it with information on, how to navigate what's happening. Yes, laws change. Thousands of laws change every year in whatever state you're in. And if your job is to enforce those laws, then you should be pretty used to keeping up with legal changes. Does it make you a policy expert? Arguably, but you should be able to keep up with those things. Yeah, Christopher, that's kind of right. I don't know that Republicans have been cleaning up after it. They've been trying to undo a lot of it in Virginia. Hey, remember how I said we had news and then we never read any of it? Hi, Ryan. Welcome. Here's some things I want to tell you about. Remember 100 years ago when we talked about the Justice Department? We'll do that one first since that's the big one. So as we've mentioned a few times now, the Justice Department did publish, this is what's called the proposed rule. They did publish the proposed rule for moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, and they began accepting public comments. We are in the process of seeing if there is a more seamless way to help you submit public comments, and we'll have something for you next week on that. In the meantime, you can go to our blog, and it has a link to the federal e-rulemaking portal. We're still really using lowercase e's to let people know in 2024 that it's electronic? I guess so. So head straight to the federal e-rulemaking portal. You can find a link to that on the front page of NORML. And you can submit public comments, but also you can just wait for us to give you a more user-friendly tool. There's plenty of time. We'll have something for you next week. And as Christopher has been keeping us updated, there's over 5,000 comments already. Remember how we were talking about Cherokee in North Carolina opening a medical cannabis dispensary? Because they can do that on tribal land, even though the state itself thinks all the marijuanas are illegal. Well, Cherokee's not alone. Nationwide, there are nearly 60 cannabis retailers that are tribally owned. That's about a 25% increase since 2023. Yeah, so check out that analysis. You can find the full analysis in MJ Biz Daily, but it does show that there's a growing number of native tribes engaging in cannabis sales. Christopher, I'll take your book suggestion. I'll take it to staff, and we'll have a good chuckle. They're public, though. You can go download all 11,000 of them when they're done. We did those too. Oh, hey, remember how there was a question a minute ago about states being close to legalization? I kind of overlooked one. Well, it's not really legalization. It's more retail sales. But the New Hampshire Senate approved legislation for the first time ever to regulate adult use sales. So good job, New Hampshire Senate. New Hampshire is the only state in New England that prohibits adult use retail. Possession of up to 3/4 of an ounce is decrimmed, is fine only in New Hampshire. And over 3/4 of an ounce is a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail. This pending bill would legalize up to 2 ounces beginning January 1, 2026. Because that's what you want to do, is have your law take effect and then still criminalize people up until whatever. There's also a House version. So the Senate version in New Hampshire has this, we'll call it franchise model, where the outgoing governor in New Hampshire, Sununu, is a Republican, and he has expressed willingness to sign legislation into law if it limits cannabis retailers to no more than 15 state supervised franchisees. No other state regulates cannabis through a state-run franchise. It's arguable as to whether or not that's even legal. But under this plan, the Senate version of the legalization bill in New Hampshire, the state's liquor commission would oversee retailers. I mean, liquor is sold by state-run stores in Virginia also, and I know in other states, but no state's doing that with cannabis because they're very different. Cannabis is Schedule 1, and liquor's not. Yeah, so the Senate's version does endorse the franchise model. The House version does not. And the Senate's version of the bill will go back to the House, and then they can choose to accept it, reject it, or send it to a conference committee. Anyhow, so that's what's going on in New Hampshire. I don't know that that puts them ahead of Florida. Cannabis, winner of the war on drugs. Thank you, Christopher. That is pretty entertaining. James, what? James, it's because you are, James, you said that the link doesn't work. It's because YouTube truncates the links when they post. Are you talking about the New Hampshire one? I'll post it again, just the link by itself and without any copy, and that should let the whole thing there. I can see the whole thing posted. Yeah. Any progress in Alabama? Not really. I'm going to open up the ACT page and see if there's anything that I'm... No, I got nothing for you in Alabama. Kyle. Kyle asks if Donald Trump gets elected, would he roll back rescheduling if it's not done in time? We've not spent a lot of time talking about that. We've spent some amount of time acknowledging that that's a possibility. I would say not so much rolls it back, but just lets it go nowhere, fall apart. I think that's what happens. You know, elections have consequences. Okay. New Hampshire, Justice Department. California, making good choices. You know, California's governor vetoed a similar bill once before, but that's not dissuading the state assembly from moving forward with it again. Lawmakers in the state assembly have overwhelmingly voted in favor of a bill that would permit licensed cannabis retailers to expand their operations and serve food and host live events like concerts. There's already on-site consumption permitted, so this would be the ability to serve food and drinks that don't have cannabis in them, as well as host live events. promotional event. I mean, you could probably read the blog and see, but the language we've been talking about is we've been using is musical and other live performances. So that's my understanding of it. I can't, first of all, I can't. I got two more for you. I have three more. One's not news though. I mean, it's also arguable that these others aren't news. Hey, Canada, you know, remember when Canada legalized nationwide? That was cool. Turns out that there's no increase in hospitalizations following legalization in Canada. Nationwide. So there you go. Ooh, and I think like we just had it, but again, you know, none of this is news to you. But listen, we reported on this pretty recently. Another study, not this study, but another study that was similar. And oh, guess what? Here's another one. Consistent with prior studies, researchers determined that cannabis consumers were more likely than non-users to engage in physical activity. Turns out that cannabis is not linked to sedentary behavior. Though it is super fun to continue. I mean, if you're, you know, the media or sad politician, it's super fun to continue with the outdated, long since debunked lazy stoner stereotype. That trope is still alive and well, despite researchers having debunked it repeatedly. Yes, Ryan, thank you. Ryan says, I saw a study come out from Virginia with less hospitalizations of minors dropped since the laws have changed. Yes, so this is kind of two parts, Ryan. Like pretty much every state in the nation, except for Texas, and I think Wisconsin, but most states in the country are responding to the reality that the last farm bill appears to have emboldened unregulated operators, and that there are unregulated products on store shelves everywhere, and often they appeal to children. So Virginia, like other states, enacted some laws. It was like, hey, don't sell unregulated garbage, and also definitely don't sell it to children. And also was like, hey, poison control. Hey, people who work in healthcare, you need to ask what the hell someone had. You can't just be like, well, it's a marijuana overdose, because that's not how that works. You need to know what it is. Turns out what kids were mostly getting, kids were not, you know, getting some expensive, boring medical cannabis product. They were getting some unregulated stuff from, you know, the garage from the gas station, or, you know, the health food store or whatever. And that's what was causing all these instances. And then new laws took effect that were like, hey, you can't sell this crap, and you definitely can't sell this crap to kids. And also, you need to ask what it is. All of these two things together, better laws, better reporting, does in fact show that hospitalizations, ER visits are down in Virginia after the enactment of these laws. Yes, MK. We need to study on all the other studies to tell us that we need another study. Yeah, we sure do, right? Ristafarian says, guarantee you that politicians are more sedentary than stoners. I'll guarantee you that there are plenty of politicians who are also stoners. Yeah, exactly. Okay, instructions. It's like follow directions. Also, Virginia has, other states have adverse event reporting portals. Virginia has one as well. It's not a surveillance tool for children, which is weirdly how someone in the administration tried to sell it. Was like, oh, this is for reporting children eating the marijuana. It's like, hey, how about you are a consumer and you bought something and then you had an adverse effect and you want to report that because the Attorney General is authorized to help you if you're harmed by a product like this in the state of Virginia. But there's no way to report that. Oh, look, now there's a portal. Guess what? It's just for people. It's not for surveilling children. This administration's insane. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to be like, okay, they're new. I'm going to try to be nice and not like rub them the wrong way. I guarantee you they don't have a whole lot to care about what this thinks. So let's just talk about it how it is. High Kind, Idaho. I know. We talked about Idaho a little earlier. Idaho is rough. I only have one last little. I have a parting gift for you all. It's not really a parting gift. It's just another article I want to share with you. This is an op-ed by NORML's Deputy Director Paul Armentano, and it's called "The Beginning of the End of Cannabis Prohibition." Arguably, this rescheduling conversation is the most significant thing to happen politically with cannabis in the past 50 years. And Paul writes about that very thoughtfully. Yes, I can see on YouTube it cut off half the link. I'll post it again. Read it. As Paul very eloquently writes, as a first step forward, this policy change dramatically shifts the political debate surrounding cannabis. We talked about this last week, and to what Paul is referring with his comment there is that, you know, the federal government has clung to this sort of flat earth mentality on cannabis for decades now, you know, arguing that, oh, it belongs in Schedule 1. It's no medical utility. And they have now abandoned that. They have said, oh, yes, cannabis has medical utility. That is a huge policy shift. As such, no credible policy discussion, no serious discussion of cannabis regulation in the United States should include that old rhetoric. Because that's what they were, the prohibitionists were hanging their hats on before. It was, whoa, what's Schedule for 1 federally? There's no accepted medical use. Oh, that's not what HHS says anymore. I hope so. Ristafarian says, what's going on with the DEA stance? Well, DEA has essentially accepted HHS's recommendation, and now it is in the review period. They've published the rule, as it's called. They've published the proposed rule to reclassify cannabis and opened the public comment period. Now, we can expect legal challenges to this. We know we can expect that because the biggest and most funded prohibition groups have said they intend to litigate to challenge rescheduling. Because they make money. I mean, they're funded by corporate interests that capitalize on criminalization, most importantly, urine testing. And if as many companies out there don't think they have to test people's urine for, 30-day-old marijuana metabolites, where are they going to get their funding from? Yeah, James, we do talk about that. Paul talks about that. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, and hair follicle testing. You're right. On Instagram, I see you. I like when people stand right outside my window and I think it's not like I'm right here. I can see you. It's terrifying. All right, we read all of the news. Yay, go team. Now, I want to tell you, hey, if you didn't get this in your inbox on Thursday, I'm sorry, you should change that. We publish our big email newsletter comes out on Thursday. Okay. And then we also publish the weekend weed read on Saturdays. Christopher, I know what your question is going to be. I see you. The Thursday newsletter delivers at 4:20 Eastern. And the Saturday weekend weed read delivers at between 9 and 9:15 Eastern. So it's going to be there when you're ready to have your morning coffee on Saturdays. Head to normal.org/subscribe. Make sure you check the weekend weed read box so that you get it right there in your inbox. Normal.org/subscribe. Check the weekend weed read box. Do it. I have. God bless it. Kind Idaho says we're working on a new initiative. It should be ready by November. We're trying to ask for decrim and personal cultivation. Okay, Kind Idaho. You can always reach out to us if you want to talk about it. If you send it to normal@normal.org, I will see it, and our political director, Morgan, will see it. Hi, Sue. Okay. It's not a show if Christopher doesn't get this joke in. Christopher says, JM, that's me. I've been digging on Triple Burger this week, loving it. I don't know what. As I'm starting to ask, I know what the answer is going to be. Christopher, what's Triple Burger? Whatever it is, Christopher likes it. And then Christopher wants to know what is my favorite type of cannabis. So I'm assuming Triple Burger is a chemovar name. Is that possible? Well, please let me know how not cool I am very quickly in the comments. Those of you who've seen the show before know that this is Christopher's favorite question to ask. What is my favorite type of cannabis? That answer is always, time and time again, legal cannabis. I'm going to make a t-shirt. Not me personally. I think NORML should make a t-shirt. What's your favorite type? Ask me my favorite type of cannabis. Legal. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for explaining, Christopher. Oh, those are words. Those are all words. I love it. Thank you. Hi, Bikes and Buds in Puerto Rico. Thank you, James. I like your joke already. Yes, Triple Burger. It seems like it should. Whatever. It should be. I love it with tangy pickles. Mr. Maui, so we NORML has long since advocated for descheduling, removing marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act altogether, and allowing states to set their own policies without threat of federal interference. NORML has been clear on this for a very long time. That is our position. However, you can do both. You can say yes to rescheduling. You can say yes, marijuana does not belong in Schedule 1. We agree with that. However, what we believe is the policy solution is descheduling. Because moving marijuana from 1 to 3 will not do anything to end the conflict between state marijuana laws and federal marijuana law. It does nothing. Every state that's in conflict with federal law right now when it comes to marijuana, if a state regulates medical or adult use or both, they are in conflict with federal law under Schedule 1. Under Schedule 3, they're still in conflict with federal law. So that rescheduling does nothing to address that. Does nothing for consumers either. Arguably opens the door to allow licensed cannabis businesses to take tax deductions. That's great. May encourage some other policy reviews at different entities. Maybe related to 2A, maybe related to CDL. It doesn't require it, and might encourage some additional discussion. Could one day trickle down to lower prices for consumers. But it's largely a nothing burger, except when it comes to like actual impact. But as we were just talking about, you may have heard, it does absolutely dramatically shift the way we engage the political debate surrounding cannabis. It takes out all that flat earth BS where the federal government was like, no, marijuana has no medical utility. The federal government has now said, yes, cannabis has medical utility. It was right there on the register for everyone to read right now. HHS, DEA, FDA all agree cannabis has medical utility. That changes the way they have to talk about it now. So we can do both. Schedule 3 is not, it's everything that's illegal under Schedule 1 is still illegal under Schedule 3. It doesn't change anything. Jehovah about the LD50 on water. I love it. It's a riot. I get it, so I think it's delightful. Will they? Who knows? What are some things I want to tell you? Hey, we have some Our Pride merch, which is in the NORML store year-round, is now front and centered, being featured in the NORML store. You can get anything from NORML's Coming Out Green collection at any point during the year. It's always there for you. But in particular, if you're looking to have some NORML merch that has a little bit of a pride flavor to it for the month of June, though suitable for any day of the year, check it out. Check out the Coming Out Green collection in the NORML store. It's at store.norml.org. Oh, thank you, Mr. Maui on Instagram for saying Minnesota is spending millions on a breathalyzer that is supposed to come out next year. That will what? Not be scientifically valid. There's some clown here in Virginia who is working on a breathalyzer, and she went as far as to say that it will help law enforcement distinguish between CBD and marijuana, and my head exploded. Sorry, what? What do you mean? Do you mean a CBD product? Do you mean CBD, the molecule itself? Because no one's confused about CBD isolate. There's no THC in CBD itself. So you can chug all the isolate you want. You're not ever going to test dirty because it's not what it tests for. And if you're the scientist, why am I the one explaining that to you? Anyhow, can't, Christopher. Yeah, so I'm glad they're wasting your taxpayer dollars in Minnesota as well. Look, you might be able to determine if someone had recently consumed using the breathalyzer and might, but you cannot measure impairment with the breathalyzer. That's not an application supported by science. Full stop. Now, if you want something to determine impairment, you want some device to determine impairment, good news, that's available. It's called software. It's available right now. You can just go buy it. You can download it. As a consumer, you can download apps. You can download Druid. If you're a company, you can buy Alert Meter from Predictive Safety, right? But that's not, we have special prosecutorial tools for alcohol. So therefore, we want special prosecutorial tools for weed that are exactly the same, even though they're not in any way analogous. Can't wait, so dumb. And Christopher said, Georgia will look at hiring psychics, I'm sure. I have no doubt. No doubt. Whew. Oh, special. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's 10 minutes after 5. That's fun. I'm surprised Instagram hasn't closed my feed, but before, in case it does, if you're watching on Instagram, please be sure to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so that you never miss when NORML goes live. I'm going to tell you about a couple events, and then I'm going to get ready for a really huge event that we have coming up next week. So, I agree, Cruz, Nebraska does need a NORML chapter. That's the wrong one. If you, Cruz, would like to get some people together and start one, awesome. You can find out information at normal.org/chapters. There's a link to the how to apply page. Coming up on Sundays, our Suncoast NORML chapter in Florida, they do their own podcast called The Rotation. You can stream that on their YouTube. Just look for Suncoast NORML on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Now, as you can see behind me, next week, NORML will be in Aspen for the NORML Aspen Legal Seminar. There's still time for you to get tickets and join me there. If you are an attorney and you need CLEs, our legal seminars are fully accredited in every state that requires CLEs for their practicing attorneys. No, Christopher, will not. So normal.org/Aspen to register. If you are not an attorney or you just don't need CLEs, we have a discounted rate just for you. Come out, meet leading legal experts from around the country, hang out with me and Paul and Keith. If you're like, yeah, but listen, I'm on the other side of the country. Okay, fine. Why don't you come see NORML in New York instead? Would you like perhaps a free exhibit hall pass to the CWCB Expo in New York? You would? Great, I have one for you. First, I have the wrong thing pasted here, so let me back up. I do still have a free pass for you to CWCB Expo. The night before CWCB Expo opens, the expo itself has their B2B rooftop bash, and they are very generously hosting the 2024 NORML Formal at their rooftop bash. You can get tickets to that. You will have to be registered for the expo to get a ticket to the rooftop bash. But like I said, you can get a free expo registration from me. I got you. CWCB Expo is June 5th and 6th at the Javits Center. You're going to use code NORML24 for that free expo pass. And if you want to upgrade your pass to be able to go to the seminars, you can get that for 50% off with code NORML24. I'm dropping that link for you now. You're just going to go to our website. It is, if you're watching on Instagram, there's a tile for it on the front page of normal.org. Just going to wait for it to go and then click on the normal 401. Otherwise, it's normal.org/normal-formal. NORML-FORML. Hello, Joyful Liz. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry to all the people on Instagram who are joining us just as we're getting ready to end our show. What is happening? Hey, Woodyard. Christopher asks if NORML will take up psychedelics and mushroom-related legislation once cannabis is over the finish line. No, the M stands for marijuana. Look, even the completely post-legalization world, society, America, whatever, you still have to represent consumers. Like legalization in and of itself is not going to undo all of the terrible policies out there that impact cannabis consumers. The roots of prohibition run deep. And unless your state level policy change digs up, yanks out all of those roots, they're still there. So people are still losing their jobs, still losing their children, still not able to be, adoptive or foster parents, still lose their scholarships, get kicked out of housing, are denied organ transplants. All of these things are still happening in post-legalization states. NORML is who works to fix that, to change that. Your kid needs to use CBD at school. Great. Who's running that boring little bill that no one else cares about? There's so many things to do to make the world safer for responsible cannabis consumers. And NORML's been working solely on that goal for over 5 decades, and that's what we're going to keep doing. Maybe someone down the line will want to expand, but I can tell you that the people who work here now, M stands for marijuana. Will it ever be over the finish line? Right, Tree? Maybe. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. Okay, one more little event coming up to tell you about. If you're in Indiana, Indiana NORML is celebrating their 50th anniversary this summer on July 20th. So you can go do that in Indiana. Come to Aspen, friends. Let's hang out. Or New York. One of those will do. Now that I'm going to lose my voice. This has been delightful. I love hanging out with you all every Friday. I will not be hanging out with you next Friday, I fear, because I will be in Aspen. So there might be a break. We'll see how it goes. Feel free to check in. You never know. Maybe I'll have time next Friday. And then the following Friday, I'll be in New York. It's like I don't know how time works. So we might not hang out for a minute, okay? Oh yeah, no, definitely not next. Not on the 7th. On the 7th, I will be in the air. I will not be able to do a show for you on the 7th. But on the 31st, we'll see. We'll see how Aspen's going. And if I can live stream any of the content from Aspen, I will. I make no guarantees, but we'll see. All right, friends. Hey, before we part ways, please hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so you never miss when NORML goes live, which might be in about 2 weeks. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks, Tree. Thanks, James. Thanks, other Chris. Everyone here is named Chris. I'm changing my name to Chris. I'll see you all in a couple of weeks, if not sooner. Make sure you subscribe, get our emails, and make sure you join NORML if you haven't done that yet. I don't know what you're waiting for. Head to norml.org/join and get your card. I'll be mailing it to you personally. All right, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you back here next time. Bye-bye.